if you like go and you figure that shit out, like how many with like the balls and like the courage that it takes for you to like go and figure something else out, especially like in technology, like, okay, how does this work? How does engineers, what the fuck is Azure? Like, how do I hire engineers? Right. And like going and figuring that out and then figuring out how to actually marry both opportunities. Like, I don't know a lot of other people that have done that. Like, I feel like there's a few, like there's a few of them here. Like maybe there's some like enterprise IT guy that worked at Exxon who's figuring shit out. But somebody who worked on a fucking frac rig or on a drilling rig who's now like building software, like I have a lot of respect for that because I know how difficult that was for me. So I have a lot of respect for you guys.
It's a lot of it, man. It's very serendipitous. With if you kind of just like zoom out, there's just things that are beyond our control. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of perseverance to like survive. There's a lot of like educating yourself on certain things, like seeing tons of technology, evolving as we were as a business from like the podcast in the beginning. Ultimately, we realized is we're in the business of information. ChatGPT comes along, opens our eyes, and we're like, oh shit, this is here. I think we're the best equipped to be able to like tackle this problem, right?
Yeah.
That's a timing thing, man. If that didn't come along, that our business would have not evolved because that needed to happen to change the way people perceived AI. The first time I used ChatGPT, I landed on it and was like, this isn't Google, this sucks. I bounced. Came back and was like, I have to dedicate some time to like figuring this thing out. And then once I did, it was like an everyday thing. And it still is an everyday thing. And I'm constantly like, I'm so obsessed with like this AI space. And so, yeah, there's a lot of hard work and grit and all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to downplay the luck component of timing because we didn't have any control over what is happening in the market. And then, but macro, that's also like, what's also going back to the energy side is like, now we're going to need shitload more power.
Yeah.
I see this as a massive Trojan horse to like black pill the world on energy. Right.
Yeah, totally. Because, well, we talked about this before, I think the last show hasn't come out yet, but just from the aspect of like how Bitcoin, one of the biggest FUD kind of attacks on it is, using too much energy and that's bad automatically. But just with what AI is going to do and where it's going to go, that energy is required. And you don't have the same people making the same arguments about AI because I think they see the need for it. They know the need for it. Bitcoin can be confusing to them, and also it can be anti what they kind of are wanting or some of their self-dealings or interests that they have. Big banks, things like that, politicians come out. But like, you don't ever see or hear the same arguments about AI and the usage of power, at least on the same level as like a main point of attack. I don't hear it anyway. But going back to what, he was saying about you guys, and you shouldn't downplay the fact of just being willing to make a decision to go chase stuff like that down. Because like we do live in a time where I think a lot of things are easy for people, especially here, to just sit back and just keep doing whatever you're doing. That's what leads to a lot of unfulfillment though. And like all these different things, being an entrepreneur and going and taking on those things is really just, to me, it's just a decision. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to live this boring way I got an idea. Sure, it's building on things that are out there, and timing obviously has something to do with it. But I think it's the type of person more than it is really anything else. Is just the willingness to go take a risk and like marry things together, like you were saying, and taking chances and putting yourself out there.
I mean, that's what wildcatting's all about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? The very spirit of a wildcatter is to be able to just like roll the dice and like bet everything. And we've done that time and time again. And there's been times where it has not worked out, and there's been times where it has worked out. And obviously where we're at now, it's like a major pivot, I guess, in the business, to where it's like everything that kind of got us to this point. Not saying that those things go away, but commercially, how we made revenue, we've killed. Right. And so now we're literally betting the entire farm on something that is, yet to be 100% like only time is going to tell,
Dude,
but
go
I
big or
think
go home, bro.
That's the only way to do it.
Life would be so boring.
Play for keeps.
Play for keeps. Play for keeps. I mean, seriously though, life would be freaking brutally boring if we just sat around and never tried anything.
I think too many people, this applies to all aspects of life, fall in love with ideas or certain things and are just not open to change, right? And I think you have to approach everything with an open mind. You know, for us, it was, okay, so if we're in the business of information, what's the best way to serve the community? AI comes along and it's like, this is it. There's nothing, like this totally changes the game. All the people are like, not saying people are going to listen to podcasts and stuff, but like over time, more and more people are going to be prompting things, and then they're going to want exact answers, and they're probably going to want it cited and sourced and know that it's like valid and some sort of like maybe even peer review in the future. But the world that we're living in is not slowing down.
No.
And AI is here to change our lives, hopefully for the better. I'm sure there's going to be some downside too that we'll have to adjust to, but
I mean, the whole Skynet stuff will be bad.
Yeah.
But honestly, like most of the painful things in life deal around change sometimes, but also like the most impactful and special things and things that lead to like the future that you want come from times of change too. So like it's kind of, you know, goes hand in hand.
Sometimes you just have to go back to first order principles and like break everything down in the most simplest of terms and ask you and challenge all of your assumptions. I don't think I do that on a very regular basis in all aspects of my life.
I do all the time.
It's like where am I spending my time? Like if there's something that I'm not doing, I'm not spending my time on, I'm like, where am I spending my time? And do I need to realign myself? And it's like, okay, I do this. Okay, should I be doing this? Like,
Right.
Should I be spending 18 hours a week playing pickleball? I don't know. You know,
Hey, man.
maybe there's better use of my time.
When you guys are like living like Steve Jobs, when you're the Steve Jobs of oil and gas tech world, and you can tell people, man, my meditation was playing pickleball, and that's where all these genius ideas are. So embrace it, man.
I just need to build a pickleball court at my house. That'd be nice.
You do. I highly recommend you do that, and then I can come over and play.
Yeah.
So
Ayahuasca
sorry,
and
dude.
pickleball.
No, it's all good, man. I like it. I think it's important to share. And I totally align. Like I think I'm not a good employee. I think the last time I was an employee was at Schlumberger, and I had my consulting business and then jumped into entrepreneurship. And I think it's a type of person to be able to understand the world, see that your identity and your freedom and what makes you feel alive is to create, and creating in business with like the kind of rules and the laws of the economy. And like, we're very blessed that we have this game, right?
Yeah.
We have this capitalistic game. So I'm 100% in. Like I'm, you know, I love entrepreneurship. I love sharing what I'm learning and the people that you come across and like the journey that you have. Like, I think it's worth it. So
Yeah.
I think you have to be cut from that cloth. And, you know, what I usually find is the people that are most successful are the ones that have the most humility and are doing it for the reasons that are beyond, you know, profit and really for mission. And that mission is their own, right? And I find that that's who I align with. It's like the craziest people, the people providing value for the world that are finding out to add value based on what they know and based on their resources, and just get after it, right? So, yeah, and I think that that's worth sharing.
How do you define your mission?
Yeah, that's great. So my mission is to serve the people that I love. My mission is to ensure that I am optimizing my skill sets and my capacities that I've built and I sacrificed and that my family sacrificed for me to have to serve the world. And then 3, it's like to ensure that I'm like taking care of myself spiritually, physically, and purposefully on the way.
Mm.
Like, I think that that's really what it's about. And I do that, you know, like grinding all week on stuff that I really care about and things that are super challenging for like my business partners, right? That brings me a lot of purpose. Just signed up for a triathlon in Austin, doing the sprint, haven't manned up to do the long one yet. To take care of myself, like I really needed a goal. Like I'm like, dude, you've been eating bullshit like on the rig and like not taking care of yourself and not like nurturing your body. You need to figure out how to change that. And by not prioritizing your health, you've been able to achieve these things, but you know, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's like having like a high interest rate on your asset. Like I was like, oh shit, I'm not taking care of myself. I need to change that. So I'm changing that. Right.
That's a constant battle, dude.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it's good.
you know how hard
it's-
it is to eat
it's-
well when you live in freaking South Dallas and you drive
Yeah.
down
But what I liked is that you were like, fuck it, triathlon. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna like the better you get in shape and the healthier, the easier that is gonna become, right? And it's gonna fucking suck if you're not like in shape. And so it's not just like this arbitrary like become healthier, like lose a few pounds.
Right.
I need
like,
that goal.
Like you have to have something that's like hard as shit.
Yeah, that's the
what I
way
mean?
I am. It's like,
Yeah. If it's too easy, it's just kind of, it's
100%.
boring almost too.
yeah. And it's been great. Like I swam 900 yards the other day and got out of the water wanting to fucking do some more. And I was like, damn, like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my mission. And being born in West Texas, from immigrant Mexican family.
You're still in West Texas, right?
So I spent time. I'm heading there tomorrow.
Are you here full time?
I'm in Austin full
Oh,
time.
you're in Austin.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
Yeah. So my wife is an anesthesiologist in Austin. And after I kind of like wanted, since 2019, I've been kind of focused more on tech, including Bitcoin mining and just technology in general, learning how to build software, how VC works. And then after my wife working, we kind of had a lot more like financial like freedom and really like reflecting.
Banking. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And I was like, you know what? Like, I really just need to reassess of what I'm doing. So then I started really tapping into some of my people I trust, because I think the number one thing in business is like finding people that you trust and that's your tribe. And that's like the fucking hardest thing to find. And I found that of all the stuff that I was doing, whether it was like innovating in infrastructure in oil and gas, or building software in Austin, or like joining a VC fund, or like, you know, helping them, I found that like the people that I really, really like meshed with was like all my oil and gas partners.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of reassessing like, okay, how do I like take what I've learned in tech and really apply those skills in like energy and oil and gas? And that's kind of what got me back into like looking how to bring AI from infrastructure and energy into the oil and gas space. And I think it's like there's like a linchpin moment that's happening right now. Like you have Sam Altman just invested in Exowatt, $20 million company. They're creating solar energy and converting it into heat storage. I don't know what their thermal battery is, but then they're basically creating like reliable energy that's these data centers can run on. So right now there's like a chase, and it's like all these energy companies are after how can we, or all these tech companies are after how can we harness our own energy to run our compute, right? So that's kind of like the full circle.
So in that instance, it would be solar to thermal capture to use thermal energy to then repower.
100%. So often a lot of the batteries that we've had
is a battery.
Yeah. So there's so recently another company out of the Stanford lab, they're using carbon blocks to store thermal.
Okay.
And then they use that heating up the carbon block to actually power industrial heat, like in cementing processes, or they use like the actual radiation light of like this like really glowy, hardcore heated rock to then use that radiation to create electricity. So what they're finding is that storage and thermal is more efficient than storing electrons. And this company from Miami, they just raised $20 million on doing that on a micro scale, where they can basically use solar, store the thermal energy in heat through a thermal battery. And then there's two ways, like you can just basically, some people pump air over hot blocks, or these guys like use these coils. I assume they use these coils, and they also pump air and it heat exchanges, and then that steam creation creates electricity. So thermal storage, I think, is like the linchpin moment that's enabling renewables to actually be super reliable on top of geothermal, right? Like I don't want to discredit what like Fervo has done, you know. And
yeah, that would be like my next thought. Is like not seeing anything in front of me. It would be like, yeah, comparing kind of the efficiency, capital efficiency, technical efficiency of kind of both. That is essentially the promise of geothermal, right? So it sounds like what they're doing is they're kind of taking what Fervo has done downhole in the subsurface and actually bringing it to the surface, right? And then using that to power the data centers.
I love that you say that, because essentially like the best way to describe anything is like to put things in terms that people understand.
Yeah.
And that's 100% what it is. It's like underneath there's a thermal like energy, you then intentionally frack into 2 wells so you can pump some water or some sort of fluid. That fluid is then converted into steam, and then that creates power, and then you just create a loop, right? So that's like essentially what, turbothermal production is. But what they're doing is they're doing something similar on surface with heat exchanging processes that are already known, but just repurposing them, right? So that's actually happening now. Like there's a company that just raised cash. I just can't think of the name of them now, but I know that the one company I mentioned that's doing that with specific in data centers is Exowatt.
Okay.
Which is crazy to me that the guy that is running ChatGPT just made a venture capital investment in a renewable energy company. Right? That's fucking wild.
So it goes back to what you're saying though. Is like
the world's about to get really fucking smart on energy.
Right.
So John Arnold, we had him on our Oil Gas Stars podcast. He spoke at Fuse, was just added to Meta's board of directors, right? And Mark Zuckerberg said, we're adding John Arnold to our board of directors because we have to get smart on energy. And I've seen 2 different separate clips on social media since then where Mark Zuckerberg is talking about their need for energy. And the way that he's talking about it is not how he's talking about things historically. Just some of the words that he's used and the way that he's thinking about it. Like you can tell that they are very much schooling themselves up on what is going to be required because they're making massive, massive bets on buying tons and tons of these GPUs and setting up all their own data centers for their new Meta stuff. And so, yeah, like once again, this is good. This is really good. The world is about to have a master class in all things energy. And guess what? On the oil and gas side, that's going to be a huge part of the mix.
Oh, yeah,
100%.
Absolutely.
Because you can't be smart about energy, like truly smart about energy,
and pretend that oil
and then pretend that oil and gas
right.
is like, you can't just throw pragmatism out the window.
Right.
Right.
What I'm gonna love over the next 5 years is watching the media decide how to handle this kind of change of rhetoric surrounding the use of energy.
Yeah.
And in particular, natural gas. That to me is going to be the one that I want to watch very closely because I remember when I was younger, you guys were way younger, natural gas was like clean still. Like, oh, it's the bridge of the future. Yeah. And then over the last like 10 years, I feel like is when they started attacking it a lot more and acting like it's, dirty energy. But there's no other option but to kind of, to me, to come back and embrace natural gas and the efficiency that it has in generating electricity. So,
hey, unless the world wants, or the U.S. in particular, wants to start just permitting a whole bunch of nuclear, which I'm totally okay with.
Right, I'm okay with that.
That's awesome.
Right,
that would be the best news ever. But guess what?
They're not going to do it.
We had a couple accidents that happened like 40, 50 years ago,
right.
and it's kind of ruined it for everybody since then. So, yeah, I would love nuclear to become a much larger part of the mix than what it is today.
Did you hear about the Oklo deal with Diamondback?
I did.
It's an LOI, right?
I haven't had a chance to. I know both of them. I haven't had a chance to run any traps on either side to kind of get a little bit more details, but I'm super excited about it. I think it's gonna be really cool. So essentially, from what I heard, they're doing the small modular nuclear reactors. I'm guessing they're doing at the well site, right? So in instances,
SMRs, huh? Little guys, how big?
They're usually the size of a shipping container.
Okay,
right. So these groups will make these things, and so you don't need the same. It's not the same permitting process as a big facility, right? Which is awesome. So that's why the SMR space is popping, right? So there's tons of these new companies that are popping up. They'll use these a lot of the times, like their main use case is going to be, once again, Louisiana got wiped off the face of the earth by a hurricane. We can send a whole bunch of these containers with these SMRs in there and set up all of these microgrids. Colin actually did that, not with nuclear, but with, he said it was small renewable microgrid. Him and a couple of other guys, the last big hurricane, they did that. So they had some kind of like firsthand experience and made a whole video about it. But nuclear would be much more efficient, and you'd be able to cover a much larger area.
Right. Yeah. I was just talking to Sarah about I want to come up with a way to like get my own little microgrid community, and we could do like a whole Bitcoin. We'll invite the AI.
This sounds like a commune.
It does. It's
I got a great plot of land in Waco.
All right, let's do it, dude. I'm down. I'm down.
Just don't tell the feds.
Just don't tell the feds. We know they don't listen to this, so yeah. And we haven't even properly introduced you though. So we'll go back to that, and then we jump back into the convo. But
Jose Ortega.
Dude, I actually love your whole like I don't care nuclear.
Mhm.
I think ultimately what it comes down is like the highest bidder, right? It's like I sat down with a particular billionaire in Austin who made his money in minerals and also in frac sand, and he spends a lot of money marketing and education and getting people about like how natural gas and oil and gas is like is a great for the environment, is great for societies, right? It's good for reducing poverty, right? Not specifically environment, just to correct myself there, but lots of education to basically us humans who consume energy to take that, right? Then you have like this Green New Deal, which is funny that like most of the people that were taking advantage of it was actually like Republican like entities. They're like, oh yeah, thanks for this regulation, we're about to crush it, and then boom, you see all like these conservative like Republican dollars go into the Green New Deal. Ultimately, like at the end of the day, it's like which lobbyist group has the best, system that is implementing like the thing that they want to advocate for, and that's really unfortunate, right? But I'm with you. Like I think to me, having worked like in the energy sector and having worked in like for a clean tech company and also for a tech company, I now understand like it's all the same. It's like you basically have incentive groups trying to push for like what's best for each group, right? So me personally, like I have my own vision, my own thought on that. Like I think I've seen how great oil and gas has been for the world in an international scale. But I think that ultimately at the end of the day, like what's going to win is like which technology and which group is providing the most value. Like I think that every day it comes down to the dollars and cents.
It's energy density, and it's also like geographically, like what do you have at your disposal? Like I love that Elon Musk wakes up every day and is like, how do we make human life interplanetary, right? I think we should kind of be asking ourselves the same question, but like how do we power human life that's interplanetary, right? So if we were to go to Mars today, right, how are we gonna power Mars, right? What resources are available to us on Mars? And if it's like there are zero natural resources, it's really, I mean, for one, I guess you could obviously have probably solar, right? So you have that option, but what is the efficiency on Mars? Nobody knows. Nuclear, I would guess the laws of physics still apply,
right?
On Mars would be great. Who knows if there's any resources on Mars that we can like drill in, like whether it's geothermal, whether it's oil and gas, whatever. I'd love to be the first one to drill a well in space, though. That'd be awesome. I'd love to add that to my resume. That'd be pretty awesome. But it's always geographically confined. Like look at geothermal. Like what Fervo's doing is the major breakthrough from them is their technology allows you to break through the confines of where geothermal is actually applicable. In the U.S., it's in parts of Nevada and in Utah, and there's only like two major players in that space. Fervo's doing this shit here like our own backyard. You know what I mean? And so if that truly works, which the test results show that it will, now you can have geothermal across the entire United States or really anywhere in the world, and you're not limited to where there's super thin plates of the earth where you can have a lot of heat activity.
I don't know who they are. What
Fervo Energy, Tim Latimer's CEO over there. Yeah, I mean they've had a massive breakthrough. A lot of funding, a lot of oil and gas funding. They have funding from like 3 or 4 of the big tech billionaires. So like I think it's Bezos, Branson, Bill Gates, and there's another one that I'm missing, are also backers of Fervo. They have absolutely crushed it on the raising capital department. But yeah, their latest test shows the technology is going to work. And so the idea there is that you would be able to drill these. This would act as a power plant, right? So you'd be drilling these all over the place, and then you'd just be selling power directly to consumers.
Yeah,
or to the utility.
If you haven't seen, Tim, he's a great guy. If you haven't seen Tim's presentation at the Ion, it's on YouTube. It's really incredible. They kind of they talks about like their funding round and like kind of how they proved how they started with one well and what they had to prove to investors that certain things would work. And then just recently, I think Devin just invested a bunch of cash into their Series D.
Because historically, there was only a handful of like R&D projects that were outside of Calpine, and there was another company, I don't remember who it is, And so for like 20, 30 years, it's been all R&D.
Mm.
And there's been no massive breakthroughs. And then Fervo came along and like cracked the code.
Mm.
And so it's much bigger news than people are, I don't know. Maybe the geothermal circle is not like super large or whatever, but it's huge. It's really big for the space.
Yeah. So me, Jose Ortega, thank you for asking. I'm a very cerebral person, so I really like to just chat about all these different ideas all the time. But thank you for having me. So yeah, right now my company is Blue Tornado LLC. Since 2014, I've been putting together different oil and gas infrastructure projects. I was previously a COO of Midland Basin Partners. It was a water infrastructure company. We raised $75 million in venture debt. Had like a forced exit there, and then helped start Terra Midstream that turned into Ace Fluids. Now got acquired there, merged actually, and since then helped start some Bitcoin mining projects. Moved to Austin, worked in tech. Was ahead of Texas for Revel. They just had a big deal with Uber by building all the charging stations for Uber now. So really excited for those guys and really happy that I've got some equity in that. And built a software company over the last 2 years. Kind of parted ways from like the venture studio that I was a part of. Just misaligned incentives while also operating my infrastructure company. And, putting together anything in infrastructure, which is produced water projects. We're working on a wet plant frac sand mine right now. The arbitrage of wet plants right now is a huge deal. I think that'll keep happening. But more importantly, putting together right now a small AI data center with the 40 GPUs as a pilot project, of which right now we're working through kind of the final pieces of a Bitcoin mining company that wants to come in and help us operate that.
So obviously we're going to spend the rest of the show talking about Bitcoin mining and AI and all that fun stuff. But real quick, didn't you say you came from saltwater disposals?
Yeah, hell yeah.
So that makes two. Ryan Knuckles also came from saltwater.
Yeah.
That's how we met. So I was doing
I know, Ryan.
I was doing consulting at the time for it was a company that made this new positive displacement pump technology. And they were like, we've spent all this money. We have this great technology. We have no clue who's going to buy it. And I was like, okay. And they were like, can you just go survey the market and kind of find out? And so that's how I ran into Ryan. I literally sent him a cold LinkedIn message and was just like, hey, dude, I don't know shit about saltwater disposals, but I know y'all use like these massive pumps. Like, does this work? Whatever. And that's how we met. Been friends ever since. And so that makes two people now who've been on the podcast who come from the SWD space into Bitcoin mining. So
would you recommend anybody getting into the SWD business?
I think that
because Ryan said fuck
Ryan
no.
adamantly was
Said no.
anti. Yeah.
I think that regulation is really tough right now, specifically where it's needed the most. But there's some very unique things happening where entrepreneurs or people that understand the space are buying SWD wells and converting them to solid waste. Because, it's just arbitrage right now. Like, I think it was Sam who's the CEO of ProPetro, who was saying Sam Sledge at the last executive conference that everything comes down to supply chain. So there's a lot of arbitrage opportunities. So if you're a unique place and you can buy an SWD well and repurpose it to inject a lot of the solid waste that's coming off, you could really do well. So I wouldn't say no to an industry without telling me where it's at.
Yeah.
What's going on. So.
Yeah, the only reason I asked was Ryan's very, very, very adamant response. So, yeah, we're curious about that. But so Blue Tornado, where'd you come up with that name, by the way?
I had just gotten off a plane from Argentina. I was working 4 years fracking, like 90-day hitches, 3 days off. And I was in front of the attorney's office that was going to create my LLC. And I was driving a blue Tundra. And I just came up with it on the spot, and I've been using that LLC for like 10 years now.
That's how we were a little operating company. We were driving through River Oaks, and our attorney calls us. We weren't prepared for this, and he was just like, "Quick, I need a name." And we were like, looked around like River Oaks Natural Resources, and he was like, "1 second." He's like, nobody's taking it. And I was like, sounds perfect. Sounds prestigious. Sounds like we're old money. This is a nice little shitty strip mall operation.
I had the same reaction from the guy, but he's like, that's the dumbest fucking name I've ever heard. But just as I thought, no one has it.
Yeah.
Signed up.
Hey, there's a key to picking them, man.
Yeah, it's not as intentional. I also am a venture partner at Topline Ventures, an ex-Cisco like director, started a venture capital fund to invest in like AI software products. And I think he's a little bit more intentional. Topline, really focusing on the people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I do. I have Blue Tornado LLC, these infrastructure projects. And I also help raise cash and find deals for the fund to invest in.
Okay. We haven't done a lot of AI talk on here. We should, because it's just exploding like we were already diving into. But and I asked you already, so if it's been recorded, I guess maybe we'll just repeat it. But can you talk about kind of the differences in Bitcoin mining and AI? Because they're both very energy intensive, like we were talking about. So there's a lot of similarities just from the concept of like taking large amounts of electricity and utilizing it for, some operations in a condensed area for a value that we're going to get paid from either the Bitcoin network or from an AI company. But there's some differences also. So can you kind of go through, just because you're a Bitcoin miner, it may not be suitable for an AI operation and vice versa.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. And I think it's like, there are different ways to segment it. Like, I think like the consumer of Bitcoin mining is a person that wants to own Bitcoin and asset and trade it, that has a monetary value, that believes in a decentralized, commodity. So like that's your customer. And I think it's important, if you're mining Bitcoin, that you want people to use it. You want people to trade it. There's people hedging it now, right? Whereas in AI, your customer is basically a tech company that's specifically processing data sets in order to come up with both insights, outputs, or in the future, I think it's like logic. I think it's an argument whether AI does logic now or not. I think really it's just providing,
culling of information.
Yeah, I think it's like really, really advanced automation, right? So that's like the first thing to understand, right? It's like your customer and what they do, because you have compute and you're mining Bitcoin and you're providing computation to the Bitcoin network. You're part of a pool. You get paid for that contribution. You're basically renting GPU to the Bitcoin network, right? You're renting computation. Now, because you do get Bitcoin in return, investors see that as volatile potentially, depending on how, where they stand on how volatile Bitcoin is. So that impacts your enterprise value, right? It's important to understand that. Like the value of my business, like every dollar, every Bitcoin of profit I make is going to be impacted by Bitcoin. So there's a certain value to that. Well, with AI, because you're tied to an actual product that's taught to computation, it's taught to people's logic, whatever you're using it. Like if you have the data centers for ChatGPT, think about how valuable that data center is right now, right? So it's really important to understand that not just your customer, but the enterprise value can different. But then if you're operating, like with Bitcoin, you don't need fiber. And with AI, you do. And it's really important to understand that it all depends on like the workloads of your customers. Like if I'm working for like an ed tech company that is just trying to infer information and they're like, hey, you know what? We don't have a large data set. We just want to process this. Great. It's a different type of deal you're going to broker, right? But if you have like a massive company, like some sort of data science company that says, we have all this data, we work in like the consumer goods, we want to process this shit ton of data. Okay, great. We need a lot of fiber and we need a lot of GPUs. Awesome. You're going to pay top dollar because we have our machines, right? So in order to operate that, you need the fiber. And then the other thing too is like regulation. It's like there's different tiers depending on the type of customer. Like certain customers are going to want you to have a different certification as a data center provider. So, and then you also need like networking engineers, you need software to process that. And it's just a little bit more technical operation. I would also make the argument it's not like so technical that you should stay away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if you figured out how to mine Bitcoin and you were running a natural gas well and you are now pocketing Bitcoin, you should definitely look into it.
Mm-hmm.
But just from like, and then the last piece is just the capital intensiveness. Like, I don't know right now, what are Bitcoin miners running for? Like $400 to $1,500 probably.
Yeah, it depends what you get. I mean, you're still sitting, if you're going to develop a megawatt and you're going to own the whole value chain of it, you're talking $1 million a megawatt.
Okay.
Like generation, everything.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. In GPUs or in miners, like right now we're a 250 kilowatt AI data center.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about like $12 million in GPU, right? So it's like capital intensive. The difference though is once you do have a customer, there's a lot less volatility because it's not that you're getting paid an asset. You actually are like, hey, I am now like the infrastructure of like this product, right? So I think that is all the difference is.
Yeah.
And I try to answer that as concise as I can.
No, I think it's good. And I think, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on it, but when I look at Bitcoin mining, I think that it obviously it's a huge amount of power, and you can use a very, very small space to consume that much power. Right. It's more for AI. Like, can you give that example of like how many per megawatt, how many acres do you need for AI versus like Bitcoin mining?
Yeah, I think you would probably need a little bit more surface for a larger data center and AI. Just with the 280 GPUs is like 250 kilowatts, right? So it's usually about 1,100 GPUs is going to be 1 megawatt, and that you're looking at like 70 servers. Okay. And thinking about like the servers that you saw in like, in school, whenever you were like in your high school and you saw a big server in the corner.
Dude,
like
when I was in high school, they didn't have those.
Oh, awesome. Well, I did.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's like the size of a refrigerator.
Right. Okay. So you need like 70 of those.
Yeah.
For like,
if you can imagine.
For 1 megawatt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you imagine like these servers and also cooling system, it's like the actual like hardware density. You're going to have a little bit more hardware space needs compared to like Bitcoin mining for sure.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I think a lot of these will actually go hand in hand in the future. And they do make sense to go hand in hand, in my opinion, because for like AI, and correct me if I'm wrong too, AI is not going to be a great option for like a flexible load. Correct? Or am I wrong on that?
So there's like this huge argument right now, and actually a good friend of mine, Ben Samuels out of Midland, he just sent me an article around like, hey, what they're trying to do is they're trying to do like flexible computational need instead of like adapting to the needs of the grid, you're adapting to the needs of the data center, and I think it doesn't work, and that's why I was like, I think that this whole like exowatt company and what they're trying to do. And like also thermal storage is huge because demand response, I think it's a very unique way to get cheap power prices because of the demand on the grid. But with AI, like literally like to be like a tier 1, like, or like the lowest tier, you have to have like 98 point something percent reliability. Right. So I personally think that you're going to have a hard time competing with like major data centers that have a shit ton of infrastructure already if you're going to even think that you're going to shut down, right? Like you can't, like that's also beauty of Bitcoin mining, right? It's very forgiving in terms of like supply, like energy reliability. So no, I would say absolutely not. Like that's another major difference is you probably need like a huge reliable energy source. And that's why the CEOs of these AI companies are investing in companies that are trying to solve that.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying, I guess, is that that's actually a reason why I would probably implement some Bitcoin mining, because I don't see a lot of, unless you're building a completely like behind the meter type of energy resource for AI. If you're on grid, I just think you're going to absolutely have to have an option to curtail your power at some level. Like if you're drawing 200 plus megawatts,
right?
And so that's where having a portion of your asset allocated to Bitcoin mining would allow you to kind of facilitate that need to curtail. You won't have to curtail 100% of your stuff. Like, say I got 50 megawatts of Bitcoin mining, right? Mixed in with my 150 megawatts of AI. I can go curtail my Bitcoin mining operation, send that power back when I need to or when I get called upon, and keep my AI operations up, almost 100% of the time.
100%. Yeah. So I think you make an incredible point. Oftentimes, like, anyone thinking that they can have a remote operation in like AI data centers, like, that's already really tough to do.
Right.
Unless
you're getting something from the grid.
Unless you have something from the grid, or unless you have a really great design on like your reliable energy source. Now, I've actually designed where you're running off of natural gas and you have batteries, and you have two different power generators doing that, and that's still really tough and it's expensive. But if you're going to get a premium price for your GPU, which is like if you think about like we're launching for like 40 GPUs right now, 220 GPUs per rack, and that's like $175,000 a month, right? Man. But it's like the GPUs themselves were like $3 million, right?
Man. Yeah.
So it's like and the hope is like, okay, we can prove that we can operate that inside a facility that has fiber. Then we basically prove that we operate an AI center. We can get the customers. We're not getting certified. We're going off market. There's different companies that actually have marketplaces. Like if you say, hey, I've got an H100 over here, awesome. Like we'll charge it. We'll take 15% off, but we'll put it to work for you because we have all these other customers that will take it. There are tech companies out of California right now that do that. They're just hunting for H100s. So my argument here is that if you are a major data center company, a major Bitcoin miner, and you have already invested in some sort of reliable energy as part of reliable infrastructure as part of like your stack now, like you have batteries and you're looking at batteries, or you have some sort of ability to have constant energy and you can get fiber because of the enterprise value increase of your business, I would 100% do it. But if you are running off like natural gas in the middle of the field and you have
you're super remote,
and you're like
SCADA,
100%. It's gonna be tough.
I think you make a good point on enterprise value because we've never talked about that here, and I agree 100%. I think it also depends on enterprise value and your balance sheet in what kind of time preference are we talking about. And I think part of the Achilles heel with a lot of the miners is they're not able to hodl as much Bitcoin as they would probably like. They're having to liquidate that, right? So
that's a change, right? That was after people got their asses handed to them. And
because I would, if I was doing it, I would find a way to divert, and whether it's through being an actual energy company and finding other ways to diversify. But every Bitcoin that I mined, I would try to hodl. And I would try to sustain operations with other diversified revenues. So whether it be through other energy stuff or whether it be through like AI stuff, and hold the Bitcoin for as long as I possibly could. Right. Yeah, so then you factor that into your enterprise value over a long period of time, assuming the price appreciation that we all expect. How do things like actually like shake out?
Yeah. Then you'd have to like almost look at a specific case because that's interesting. That would be really interesting.
I think what Sailor's doing. Right. Like MicroStrategy will be the most valuable company in the world, hands down, purely based on their balance sheet.
Just on the balance
Nobody
sheet,
fucking cares about the business.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, that's to me was like, dude, like my mom picked melons in Pecos, Texas, and my dad worked construction. And every time that I like got to the next level, I was in my physics professor's closet, like, oh, hey, Jose, I want to apply to go to Texas Tech. Oh, and the lady laughed and said, oh, great, I'll help you. And I didn't apply to any other school. Like, knowing I probably would have, like, don't get me wrong, like I'm a diehard Red Raider. My in-laws would probably kill me for saying this, but I probably would have like applied to like a different school that would have given me even more diverse amount of opportunities knowing now, right?
Yeah.
But why I bring that up is like the moment that I realized truly how enterprise value works, and you think about your cash and your time that you invest into things, you really learn how to like build wealth, right? And it's like what you guys are doing, right? It's like you or a marketing company, activation company. You're able to host events where startups come and pitch. There's some sort of monetization structure to that. You work your ass off, you're good. Okay. But if you invest your dollars into building your own AI tool, that's software that's helping the energy business, like what's the value of those dollars and energy going there now?
You're spot on.
Right.
Most people don't realize that. I mean, we don't want to talk about it a ton, but like, yeah, we had already taken investors. The best media companies in the world will trade at 3 to 5x revenue. And so you position yourself as a Gen AI company in energy, and the enterprise value in what you can extract out of that for the same amount of work, practically. It's our fiduciary responsibility to our investors to do that. And it's our responsibility to our community to do that. It's a responsibility to ourselves to take care of our families to do that. So yeah, going back to what we talked about in the very beginning, it's like hard decision, but then again, not really.
Yeah, no, 100%. Right. And I think that that's like what I would advise is like, then the other thing that's kind of what I think is like fucking bananas still, like in 2018, I was in the office. I met with like 17 different operators in Midland. And one of them in particular, I'm not going to mention who, looked at like our Bitcoin mining model. And they were like, so you're saying you can do this in 18 months? I said, absolutely. He goes, you guys are fucking crazy. Y'all are wasting my time. And like walked out of the room. And I was like, okay. And then now like Texas becomes like, at the time it was like 3% for like, I don't know, 5% of all Bitcoin mining was happening in the US. Now it's like 33, right?
Yeah.
But my point being is like, it's the point that I'm making is like, not just enterprise value, but aligned incentives, right? You talk about like every time that you talk to somebody building infrastructure in Bitcoin mining, they say, well, how do I like actually get across the table, like to convince an operator to do it? It's like, you hear the same analogy. It's like, you know what I can do? That $1.75 per MCF, I can turn that into 6.5. Like every time, like you call upstream data right now, that's what they're going to tell you, right? And that's because that's what they need to tell their customers in order to convince them like, okay, now you put it in my terms.
Yeah.
Right. I think that, and this is like for any Bitcoin mining company that's listening, is if you already have investors and you're incentivized by Bitcoin and like the spiritual and like decentralizing, I think you should be really looking at your enterprise value, and you should be looking at your capital structure, and you should really think like, how can I leverage the infrastructure that I have to optimize all the opportunities? And based on what I know and based on the people that I've been speaking to, and some people that have been on this podcast, if they're building infrastructure for Bitcoin mining and they're building boxes and they're putting on transformers, if you think about, ask them which customer is showing up to the table with a bigger checkbook. Is it the data centers that are building AI systems, or is it the Bitcoin miners that are building? And ask them what they're excited about, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not against Bitcoin at all. Like I think, like I have, I tried really early on and had a really hard time raising money for it. Met a bunch of great people, had some success mining, but I didn't like turn into, I was walking into rooms at the same time, Coley Cavanis at Crusoe was coming into rooms, right? Started super early when he had an $8 million check from like Bain Capital, right? So don't get me wrong. Like I was 7 years ago, I was trying to do this, but I think that as a entrepreneur and as understanding, like having my pulse on like what AI companies are doing, like if you're not thinking about GPUs right now and thinking about and analyzing it and looking at the enterprise value of what running GPUs for AI computing is, then I don't think you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Because you already have the infrastructure, you have the leverage, you already have the labor capital trained to operate these data centers. Like making that jump, like how difficult is that, right? Yeah. And what's the reward, right? So I'm not talking about replacing it or doing it independently. Mm-hmm. I think you should be diversifying it.
I think it's a no-brainer to at least do your due diligence, particularly if you're building infrastructure on grid.
Right.
If you specifically want to be in the off-grid game, I've yet to see anybody pull this off. Have we talked to anybody on the off-grid side that's pulled off AI? Due to the downtime, right?
No, that would be the thing I would tell you, because you do got to hit 95 plus at least percentage runtime, don't you think?
I think it all really depends on like what the workload demands of your customers are.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes like you just download the data and then you process it and you got to send it back to them. So I think it's like, I have not ran into a scenario where it's like you wouldn't want to invest all that money without knowing that answer. Right.
That's probably off grid's difficult. I mean, it's tough. Like if you're hitting 92% runtime, you're doing pretty well on a off grid Bitcoin mining operation.
And what run off of what though?
Natural gas.
100%, right?
Yeah.
And that's why so for the same reason that I think the CEO of Diamondback is entertaining running, signing a 20-year PPA on a micronuclear site, because everyone's sick and tired of like having to deal with the grid to run their business, right?
Right.
So
we're decentralizing energy.
Right. So I'm really bullish on off grid, but like I think there's some companies that are
differentiating though, you're saying, right? From the energy source or what?
No, I'm talking about like I'm really bullish on innovation off grid.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now in terms of the pilot we're running in like a proven center that already has fiber, that already has other small GPUs. We're just adding and filling in with like this model to prove that we can operate that. Right. And once that's done, then my goal is to like add more and then sell the asset. Right. Because I don't want to be like the king of this AI data center company. Like that's not my goal.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. This whole time you're talking, I'm like, I know a few sites I need to go grab and just flip them into AI sites. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Right. But like if you have fiber, you have the infrastructure. But I think, and this is my opinion, and I think it goes into like what a lot of like maybe people that, probably have more resources than us. Like the CEO of OpenAI today wouldn't have invested in an off-grid energy source if these infrastructure constraints weren't already a problem. Right. The first, like 2 months ago, he announces, I want to raise all this money to develop my own chips. Great. Now I want to invest my own money in what I think is the off-grid solutions that are going to work. Right. So like, this is like the CEO of the company with the most growth ever.
Yeah.
Right. So if we don't think we're in an important space and we shouldn't be thinking about AI in what we're doing in Bitcoin mining, then like I think you have wool over your eyes. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think you made a really good point that if it's day one, you're hitting the pavement, and you're like, man, I don't know if this is gonna be a Bitcoin mining play or an AI play. It's gonna be way easier to raise the capital on the AI side, right? Because everybody that we know has capital constraint issues. It's not like we can't find the power or we don't have the equipment, we don't have the ASICs, whatever. It's like it's purely just we don't have the capital to be able to grow at the rate that we would like, bar none. Just got off podcast with Romain over at Sato. I mean, he said that they're public for that very reason. It's access to more capital in the markets, right? It allows them to grow the way that they want. What I guess what I haven't wrapped my head around, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, is say that was my play, right? I was like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to be a pure play AI data center. Like that's what Crusoe's done, right? So they went from being off-grid, flared specifically as an ESG play to mining Bitcoin to now we're going to try to do some AI stuff. Now we're not even going to touch flares as far as I know and go just purely on-grid AI. How do you build a moat around that business? Because it's so, there's a lot of people and so I've zoomed out and like looked at some of these other like conferences that are like AI data center shit that's like been around for a long time. There's a lot more players in this space than a lot of people realize. And so it's like, how do you build a moat around that business? How do you differentiate? I think it's a easier in the hierarchy of business models to build something up, to grow it, to sell it, flip it to one of the big guys, right? But if you wanted to make something that was like truly differentiated, what is that moat?
Yeah. So the only reason I'm even considering this is because of the strategic partnership that I have with a technology company on the cooling side. So they developed a direct heat exchanging system that reduces the power needs of cooling by 95%. They have a dielectric fluid. It's like a bolt-on cooling system and like completely eradicates immersion cooling and air cooling, right? In terms of like efficiencies, right? In terms of like, don't get me wrong, like immersion's great, but you don't have to like take the whole rack out of the pool,
Is it hydro?
No, it's a directed chip, dielectric fluid, like heat exchanging. It's a new technology.
Oh, wow.
So you basically bolt it on directly to the GPU. It has its own cooling system. It's a closed loop system and it just circulates. So it keeps going in and out and evaporates. I can show you, I've got the deck. But essentially, because of that technology and because of this player, they're able to have very good relationships with a lot of the GPU manufacturers. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to have access to them.
So you have a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So there you go. That makes sense. That's your moat.
Yeah. So that's your moat is like you need to be sure that you're able. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like how many Bitcoin miners have moats because of their relationships with their procurement partners, right? Like think about that. Like especially like in 2019, whenever it was a bitch to get a hold of.
Everybody has the same relationship with the same like 3 reps.
Yeah, they're like I've got the relationships. Like, dude, there's only 3 people out here, so
you know what I'm saying?
It's one of those 3.
Well, I mean, that used to not be the case, but like, I that's funny that you say that. But yeah, no, for sure. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's like I'm not saying that this is like not an easy road. Like, you're competing with a bunch of Silicon Valley guys that are convincing VCs to give them $100 million checks, and they're just buying GPUs, sitting on them, twiddling their thumbs, thinking about where they're going to implement that like computation, right? So, but still, like if you're and you can buy them. Like I've had conversations with Bitcoin miners that have access to procuring these GPUs, right? So it's not inaccessible, but I think that my reason for as an investor and as an entrepreneur, like why I got involved is because I do have a direct path to be competitive, and I do have a direct path for procuring more GPUs.
Do you think this is just some devil's advocate stuff, because we saw in that last Bitcoin bull run where people did go out just buying a shit ton of stuff, and like then it sits there with not a lot of room to go. Then we go through a little bit of a bust, which is a difference here. I think AI, like you don't have the same, you're not driven by a commodity like you are in Bitcoin, which commodities are always susceptible to booms and busts. So I think that's an advantage probably in the AI world, is if you think we're going to continue with the growth in AI and kind of as a society start to rely on it more, which I don't see why we wouldn't.
It's inevitable at this point.
It is inevitable.
There's no turning back the clock.
Stuff. Right. No, dude.
The cat's out of the bag, dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can't really put it back in there. I agree. So I see that as a really big advantage for AI over like Bitcoin mining. I do think you marry these together still, but I could also see some of those valuations maybe coming down some, but not for necessarily the same reasons that I think we saw the Bitcoin. Because you remember the Bitcoin mining stocks were absurd for a while. They're early on, like 2020, 2021, it went crazy, and their valuations were like way, way, way out of whack. I could see some of that coming if we just get a huge amount of new AI companies coming up, and you start getting it gets frothy like anything can. But I think you're a little bit safer because you don't have that commodity price driven environment. But do you see the equipment that people are buying factoring in a lot on valuations of these companies?
Yeah. So right now, like even I have been very like sticker shocked on like a lot of, especially like NVIDIA, right? Like if you follow, like you're like, oh shit, like there's no possible way.
Yeah.
But like that's still a very, very like valuable stock to buy. So yes, I think there's obviously going to be some market value inflation. Now, also one thing to make super a point that's also important and critical to discuss is it doesn't necessarily have to be AI, because what's happening is like in Florida, some of these co-location centers are paying like 32 cents a kilowatt hour. Damn. Right. So then what happens? Like you're the CEO of a data center.
32 cents.
Yeah, dude. And like
I've seen.
Damn. There you go. See, there's like some insight numbers.
Yeah.
In New Mexico, I've seen like co-locations charging 18 cents. Right. So hence why, like, if right now, if you're sitting with the access to the grid and you have like your own infrastructure, you can then basically co-locate, right? Obviously another great opportunity. I think a lot of the miners that we know that started early are looking at co-locating AI. The ones in Texas that I know that are making a shit ton of money is actually building the modular systems for some of these data center companies. Now, another thing to mention too is there are some companies raising cash on remote data centers that isn't necessarily AI computation, that is other forms of data center services, which can be storage and inference, and also graphics cards. So I did a model using Claude AI the other day, and I said, which is like, I think I prefer Claude over ChatGPT because it actually has like some really good problem solving skills. And I was like, if I was in the middle of West Texas and I was using Starlink to as my internet, what type of like GPUs for NVIDIA could I run? And it like spit out. Like it told me, actually, if you had this, you could actually run these for like 40 cents an hour. I was like, oh shit. Like you can actually go out and like, okay, how much do they cost? Oh shit, those graphics cards are only $300. Oh, badass. Well, now I actually, Claude helped me solve a data center that you could run off of natural gas, right? Or maybe solar and some batteries and, you know, a small operation, right? So let's not be this. It's also recognized that the data center space isn't just limited to AI. It's obviously like what's really like popular and like what's like highest margin for sure, highest margin. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only accessible route for a Bitcoin miner to find a different way to monetize.
I agree with everything you're saying. I'm big on diversifying your revenue streams. Just you have to be, and I like the thing that Bitcoin has for it from a utilization. Bitcoin mining has for it from a utilization standpoint that I still think is unmatched is the flexible load aspect of it. Like that's the key to it. But I do completely agree. Like, if you've got the ability to kind of co-locate some AI with some Bitcoin mining, like, I don't know why you want to do it. Honestly, it's the margins are ridiculous. If you can go do 32 cents a kilowatt hour hosting.
I mean, there could be some data centers that you convince to relocate to your location in Texas. And maybe you charge them 12, right?
Yeah, shoot.
Right. So
I'm still okay with that.
100%, right? So that's what
as
I'm
far
getting.
as infrastructure, if I'm wanting to host someone, what kind of infrastructure differences am I looking at for a Bitcoin mining operation and an AI operation? Like, could I convert some of my Bitcoin mining containers? Say I'm running the hydros from Giga, right? I'm running some Giga hydro containers. What kind of difference are we talking? What has to be retrofitting or whatever has to be done for an AI operation versus like the M63s?
So I don't want to speak to like which type of tier that you're going through, because you do need like, there's like cybersecurity implication. There's like networking. Yeah. There's also fiber optic, as I mentioned.
Fiber. So that's a big one, right?
So again, like the answer to that question is going to be who is the customer and like what their requirements are. Like what we're doing is like, we're saying, hey, we're starting small. We're going to work with a broker. This broker is working with different like tech companies and different, basically consumers of this computation. They come to them saying, hey, I'll take whatever you got in this like capacity, and then they'll manage it. So for our operation specifically that we're looking at starting, or we're working on now, we're not specifically focused on like the highest tier. We're just working through like, hey, we've got these GPUs. If you want to take 20, 30% to get them to work, great, just get it done. Yeah. Because we want to prove that we can operate, right? So I think that answer is very variable, but I think like to give it my best option is you would need to have like, to look at like what these different tiers require for you to have in terms of the location and safety, in terms of like security. You would need fiber optic 100% if that's AI and the workloads demand like that type of networking. And then you would also need certain staging, because depending on the type of like data center you're running, you need to give place for your team to actually go and like shift stuff out. So you need a little bit more sophisticated staging. But other than that, like I think it's all solvable. Yeah.
Okay. I think the form factor is a little bit different, so it's not like you can just slot an H100 into like where an M62 was. Yeah, and you wouldn't like have like, you have a completely different design. Yeah, like you have servers versus like the racks that you're putting in your miners, right? So
have you seen the M63s? They look like servers. They look like that kind of server style look compared to like your traditional like S19 or whatever. So, but I'm curious.
Yeah, just slide in, slide out.
Right,
slide long and skinny.
Yeah, that is a closed loop hydro machine.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. I have to go. I have an appointment I got to get to.
Yeah, my son's sick too.
But
man, we could keep talking forever. This is fun. This is a great conversation.
We may need to have.
We're gonna have to have you come back.
Right.
Oh, thanks, man.
Because This is, it's something we don't get to talk about enough. And I think it's something that more miners are obviously getting into it, especially the big guys.
Yeah, the big guys
they all
for sure.
recognize it. So
Yeah.
I think that it's inevitable. And I think they go together like peas and carrots, man. It's like Jenny and Forrest. Perfect.
No, for sure. Like it takes a lot of capital.
Mhm.
I'm looking at like proving this out, adding my like contribution to like this miner that I'm working with, maybe add a few more servers
Mhm.
and then button up and sell it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not looking at like doing it all. I mean, maybe, but right now like capital is very difficult,
Right.
especially in Bitcoin mining. So that's kind of my intention. But yeah, happy to come back.
I like it. Don't fall in love with your own deal, man. Whatever you want to do, sell that bad boy. You make some money on
That's
it.
the best advice
Yeah.
that I got, man. When I was starting early, I was getting all emotional and
Mhm.
kind of hung go. There's Jose. There's always another deal.
Always,
So
man.
fucking true, man.
Just
And
get on base.
every deal you do builds on the next thing. Every failure you do builds on the next thing. I even saw a study, another podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about that. The better indicator for future success for an entrepreneur is like how many failures they've had and like experience. It's experience, man. Thank you, Jose.
Yeah, thank you
It's
for
good,
having me.
man.
This has been awesome, man. All right, y'all. Go smash that like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell button. We've had a lot of people listening that I would not expect to be listening. So thank you guys for tuning in. Catch you guys in the next one.